In this video, we'll be talking about a lesson 11.2, simple interest for a given number of days. So we previously looked at a lesson 11.1 where we talked about finding simple interest using months and years. And then we're able to find the principal, the rate, and the interest and the time. In this one, we're focusing on how to find simple interest using days. So for this assignment, for this spreadsheet, we want to be using the spreadsheet to calculate days. So if we get into example number 1, what we're looking to do is find the number of days between two dates. So for this example, we're given a date of March 24th to July 22nd for the first one, and then example 2 or example 1b, we're going from November 8th to February 17th. So, start date for the first example, March 24th to July 22nd. And all we simply do, the formula says we go equals end date minus start date. So the amount of days between July 22nd to March 24th is 120 days. Now let's look at the second example here. We have a start date, November 8th to February 17th of the following year. So what we have to make sure is that we change this date out to be 18 because we're not going back to 2017, we're going forward. So formula, end date minus start date, enter. So for the first example, we got 120 days. And for the second example, for part B in example 1, we got 101 days. So again, make sure when the dates are overlapping to a different year that you make sure you change the year out. All right, now let's look at example 2. Now, finding these ones, in the book it talks about finding number of days, and then example 2, find the number of days of one date to another using actual days. What that means is using the chart versus using paper. We're doing on spreadsheet, so that's why it looks like we're doing the same thing over again. So instead of us having to calculate everything through a different way, this is the quickest and fastest way of doing it. So let's look at example 2. We got March 12th to June 7th. And the formula again is equals end date minus start date, 87. Let's look at the second part of example 2. We got November 4th to February 21st. Now again, if you automatically let it do it itself, it's going to put the same year, so we have to change that out to be 18. All right, so let's take end date minus start date, enter. So for the first example, we get 87 days. For the second part of example 2, we get 109 days. Now let's look at example 3. Example 3, what we're doing is they give us a start date, March 25th, and then instead of giving us an end date, they actually just give us a number of days to add. So we're going to take the start date, 325, plus 90 days, and we would get June 23rd, 2017. And all we did there was run equals, click on the start date, plus the number of days to add. All right, now let's look at the second part of example 3. We have a different date of November 7th, still 90 days. We go equals, start date, plus number of days to add, enter. And as you see here, it automatically takes it to the next year, which is real nice. So all we did was put the start date plus number of days, and then we get the end date. All right, now we're going to look at something called exact interest and ordinary interest. Now for this one, this is used in the banking industry to calculate the amount of interest on loans, investments, and many other things. So for this one, this looks similar to yesterday, but instead of using months or years, we're going to be using days. So let's just look at the example first, and then we'll be able to work through what is exact interest and ordinary interest. So the principal for this loan was $17,650. We are given an interest rate of 12%. The time, which we'll find in a minute here, and then we're looking for exact interest. Now, exact interest is using 365 days throughout the year. Ordinary interest is using 360 days. So let's look at the first example, or the dates that are given. So we have here that the start date for this loan was May 12th, and then we have an end date of August 27th. So now we need to find the total days in between. End date minus start date, 107. Now that we know the number of days, now we're ready to put in the time. So for time, what we're doing is we're going to go equals 107. And again, 107 came from the total days, divided by 365, and we're going to go enter. So this gives us decimal form what that amount of days would be using. So for exact interest, we divide by 365. Now, to find the exact interest, we're using the formula of P times R times T. So we're going to go equals principal times rate times time, enter. So the exact interest for this loan on this day is $620.89. All right, now let's look at it as if we used ordinary interest. So the principal is the same. That's the same there. Same dates. But this time, instead of dividing by 365, we're going to divide by 360. And formula to find this, principal times rate times time. So as we can see, there's a difference in interest that's building up. Using ordinary interest, it's always going to be higher than exact interest. So that's a good way to calculate and kind of check yourself too, to find out if you're doing it correctly, is that ordinary interest will always be higher than exact interest. So in this lesson, we talked about finding specific days, number of days in between. We talked about finding specific dates, and we also talked about finding exact and ordinary interest.